Alright, welcome. This is the first test for the Dinjo Sound sound design channel. I'm going to be testing my microphone setup. I'm going to be testing my camera setup, some lighting, how well I can record off of the screen, the quality that I get out of it, and some of my editing process. So whether anyone ever sees this or not, it's up in the air. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do, and the point of this test, is I'm going to see if I can make this microphone sound as clean as possible to my ears. Listening through a pair of MD V600 headphones from Sony. The recording is done on a line gradient microphone. It's a Audio-Technica, I want to say it's a 835B. I'll correct that if need be. And it's going straight into a Behringer X32 compact, which is then feeding both the headphones and directly into the camera. I've got a Canon 7D. It's got a Tamron 17 to whatever that goes to on it. I want to say it's 50. Yep, 17 to 50. It'll do an f2.8. Right now I'm at f5.6, 1/48 of a second, recording, I believe, 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second. Or maybe it's at 30 frames a second. I'll have to double check that. In any case, let's get into the meat of this, which will be EQing the microphone. Right now you're hearing it clear. And what I'm going to do first is come in on this screen, and I'm going to select to turn on the low cut, which you do by pressing the button here under low cut. And then as I pull it up, you're going to hear eventually it'll start cutting off some of the low end, and then you get, well, it doesn't go too crazy high. So you'll hear that I've lost some body in my voice, and when I turn it off, you get a fair bit of that back. So let's turn it back on. And let's set it down to something a little bit more reasonable for voice. And the goal of this is not to necessarily affect the sound of the voice, so much it is to go through and find where background noise and rumble, for example, if something was shaking the mic stand or there's a very low frequency noise in the environment, this would remove that, so it helps clean up just the raw channel before anything else is happening. So we'll select the low frequency band. There are 4 parametric bands to work with. They're currently all set to be parametric EQ, with the highest one normally being a high shelf, currently set up as a high frequency parametric in preparation for this. What we're looking at here, across here you'll see all the frequencies from 20 Hertz up to 20,000 Hertz. The orange is what I'm doing to it. If I turn it off, well, the EQ on and off, you'll see that the line went gray and is now back to orange. That indicates that the EQ is turned on or turned off. The low cut has its own button that can turn that on and off, and it just appears and disappears. It's separate from your 4 bands. So let's come in, and the first thing I want to do is find the things that are making this sound unnatural, because it's not sounding particularly great to me. And there's a trick you can do to do that. You can take a filter, especially if you're recording. You don't want to do this live through a PA necessarily. You can in certain cases, but it's very careful. And then you take the Q and you make it as narrow as possible, which you'll see here where it says Q, that it is going up. I keep grabbing the wrong knob. The higher the number, the narrower the Q, and that's the narrower the width of the filter, and I've got it cranked way up. And so right now I'm boosting at 143.2 Hertz, 13 decibels up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sweep this, and you'll hear a lot of traffic noise in the background in general. It's just kind of the byproduct of my environment. Not sure if I'll ever be able to get rid of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep talking, and I'm going to listen for places like this where you can hear all of a sudden it started reacting in a more interesting manner. And I'm going to keep listening. Oh, there's another one. That's right around 400 Hertz. And as I keep going up, you'll hear a couple more come in and out. 750 Hertz has got another good one. And then as we keep going up, it's about 1.5K. You'll hear it really whistling at me a little bit. And then as I keep going up, kind of as you get to 3K, so you're getting to kind of harmonics here of whichever root frequency we're dealing with, but it's 1.5K, 750. Whoa, there it is, 750. 375 or so. So down right in here. And then if you get really down low, kind of in the 130s, 140. Well, that one's behaving pretty well. Though around 150, it's giving me a little bit of something in my headphones. So I'm going to turn this on and off. And with it turned off, you can hear it cleans up a little bit. So you can hear a hair of here of it doing something, so I'm not too worried about this frequency. But what I'm going to do is I'll pull it out a little bit. So this is, and by a little bit, it's very less on the numbers and more on how it sounds. Since this one's not having a giant effect, I'm going to do a fairly minimal cut on it, mostly so I remember where to come back. But the next one I'm going to go to my low mid. You'll see it highlighted channel 2 here. I'm going to come through, I'm going to go up to that 300, was it 350, or 325, sorry, or sorry, 375. I'm going to come up into 375, and again I'm going to make my cue really large, and I'm going to crank it up, and you'll hear that real boxiness come in, and then I'm going to start pulling it out and see how that affects the sound. And then I'm going to open this cue up a little bit, because it's not just happening at that frequency, there's some stuff happening around it. And by opening it up, I give myself a little bit more room, because my voice isn't just a linear source. It's going to have a lot of different frequencies in it at any time. And so it's not necessarily just at this tone, but it's at various frequencies around it where this problem will come in. And so I'm going to open it up until it sounds either better or worse to my ears. And what I find is right about here, with a fairly wide filter, excuse me, that I like the sound of it. And now I'm going to come up to the high mid channel, and I'm going to select 750 Hertz. Which you'll see it's passing through 1000. There I'm at 751.7, it's the top is frequency. I am now going to make its cue a very large number, which makes it very narrow, which is a little counterintuitive, and I can explain that later in a different point. And now if I really bring it up, you'll hear that whistling come in, and that's what I want to get rid of, is this, because this is sitting in the background at a lower level, but it's in there affecting the tone of what's happening. So I'm going to pull that out, and then I'm going to open up the cue a bit and see, and you'll see the graphical representation is not perfect. The thing that I haven't been talking about are the blue lines popping up over top of everything. What that is a real-time analyzer. It's taking the audio that's running through this filter, and by it I mean the X32. This is built into the latest firmware, and has been since version 2.0, I believe. It takes the audio and it runs it through a fast Fourier transform, or an FFT, and looks at each of these different bars being a different frequency and the amount of energy at that frequency. And so what you'll see is actually here, for example, there's a fair amount of energy happening right around the one notch that I made. And there are some other places where we're looking at it. And then this lets us choose what we want. So this is going to be before the filter, where there's a bunch of sound energy coming from. And it's not, there's a lot of energy in here that we want. So you don't necessarily just want to make it flat. You're looking for places that are troublesome. So if I were to get into feedback, what you would hear is, or what you'd see is one big spike that would stick around, and maybe some harmonics of that. But in this case, we're going more for the tone of it rather than trying to make the room flat or get rid of problematic nodes within a room. And so I'm going to listen and have it set up so it shows me the post EQ, which means this is showing me after it's gone through the filter that we're setting up, what the value it's going to push out is. So the last thing I want to do is go into that high frequency band. And it was again at about 1.5K that we were hearing that troublesome bit of noise. So we can come in, let's turn that from a high shelf using the mode button on the EQ section. We're changing it. So when you put it on the high cut, you can see there's still audio there, but man, it loses all that hiss, which is good, but the whole sound sounds very dead in my ears. I'm very curious what this will sound like in editing when I'm listening in a quieter environment. But the amount of sound that I lose by doing that was pretty immense. But it's a good demonstration, so I can come in. What I'm going to do is adjust the frequency, and as I raise the frequency, you can see it starts, even though this is saying 5K is where it's coming in, it's having an effect much lower than that. And as I go even higher, I get up here, I start bringing in some of that hiss. And my personal belief is that here it sounds way too dead, which is where it was kind of by default. I think I had probably said that a while back. And as it comes here, you get a lot more of that background noise. And as it comes even further up, the background noise doesn't get any much more pervasive, but that hiss starts coming in, which again may be part of my makeup gain or maybe part of my headphone level. So I'm curious what things actually sound like, but let's put it here, because I do like what it ended up doing to clean up some of that high-end hiss. And it's not affecting my voice terribly much, because above especially 8K, where it's currently centered, there's not a lot of information in a male voice in particular. My voice is particularly not scratchy, but kind of dry and flat. And so not a whole lot of high-end sparkle in there that I have to worry about. And so I'm going to come over and just put that on the line, and that cleans up for the recording, I hope. So we'll take a listen to it. And let's see, it looks like I'm coming up on my time limit with the camera. I think it does 12-minute sections. So what I'm going to do is a trick where, because I'm not really using this filter, I'm going to take it, bump it up, put it over into that 1.5K, because all these can be moved around. They're fully parametric. They're not limited to a specific bandwidth. 1.55 was about where I liked it. And you'll see it says 1K55, and that's 1000 hertz, 550 hertz added to that. So 1000 plus 550. It's not 1055. It's 1550 hertz. So I'm going to now do the cut that I wanted to do. And I'm going to open up the Q on this a bit. And I think that's probably a little bit excessive of a cut. But if you take this, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the high cut, or the high pass, which is the low cut filter. They're equivalent. A high pass lets the things that are higher than it go. A low cut lets things that are lower than it, it stops things that are lower than it. So high cut and low pass are equivalent. Same with high pass and low cut. And on here, the terminology is a low cut. So I'm going to turn off the low cut filter, I'm going to turn off the EQ. And now you can hear what it sounded like before we started EQing, which, to me, my voice sounds a little more natural of the tone that I hear in my own head. However, it's not a very clean sound. It's got some really annoying bits to it. So if I turn it back on, it's a little cleaner, a little flatter, and a little bit more controllable, especially as I get into playing with some more EQ and whatnot. If we want to go really crazy, I can turn on the compressor, which is not going to be doing a whole lot. Right now I've actually got it set up as an expander, which will basically mute me whenever I get quiet. It's not really muting, it's turning me down slowly. But you'll hear it because of all the background noise. So if you heard the way all the background noise goes away, that's the expander kicking in and reducing the channel volume down to the low level. And it's something that's kind of annoying on this. I'm going to play with the settings and see if it's something that's valuable. But as long as I'm in a noisy environment, I think it's going to be too audible. Anyway, that was my test video. I'm going to come through. Maybe I'll annotate this as I go into things. And I will